Hey everyone, it's Dr. Fox, and this will be our launch point for our discussions of the urinary system. So let's get ready to renal. In this video, we'll outline the major structures of the urinary system. We'll also describe the principal functions of that system. So let's begin with a quick note, and that is sometimes you'll hear people refer to urinary things as renal and sometimes as the urinary system. Well, specifically, renal references the kidneys in particular, to the exclusion of the remainder of the system, whereas urinary is the inclusive term, which includes not just the actions of the kidneys, but everything distally with respect to the elimination of urine. So we call it the urinary system, and oftentimes we'll talk about renal anatomy or physiology. So, with respect to the anatomy, this system is really quite elegant. We have paired retroperitoneal organs, known as the kidneys, which are dynamic filters of the blood, and these kidneys produce filtrate, which can be adjusted depending on conditions, which ultimately then becomes urine. And urine is conducted from the hyla of the kidneys through tubes called ureters down into a midline peritoneal urinary bladder. And the urinary bladder is then drained to the external world via the urethra. The urethra is not pictured in this particular photo. There are three major functions of the urinary system. The first being the maintenance of extracellular volume and osmolarity. So there is quite a large amount of intracellular fluid that's within plasma membranes. And then there's the interstitial fluid that's surrounding cells. Then there is the plasma within our blood, and then other fluids, things like lymphatic fluid, cerebrospinal fluid, and your kidneys are a dynamic filter that will affect all of these fluids because they are contiguous. There are processes of exchange of materials between all of them. So in particular, your kidneys are wonderful filters for various ions. So sodium, potassium, calcium, chloride ions, phosphate, etc. The nephrons, which are the functional units of your kidneys, have the ability to retain or excrete a lot of these. And in so doing, this sets up the opportunity for your kidneys to be involved in the maintenance of pH homeostasis. So we've discussed this in the context of the respiratory system. Your kidneys may be slow to adjust blood pH, but they are helpful in that they may secrete protons, they may conserve bicarbonate ions depending on local conditions. Your kidneys are also the means by which you can secrete or conserve water. And then finally, they are a source, albeit a minor source, generally during times of exacerbated fasting, for the maintenance of concentrations of blood glucose. So we usually think of your liver as the predominant, sometimes even the primary organ for gluconeogenesis, or the production of glucose from precursor molecules. But this is something that can occur within the kidneys as well, oftentimes from glutamine or lactate or other precursor molecules. Glucose can also be secreted by the kidneys if it is in overabundance, but typical renal clearance of glucose is 0. So if glucose is being excreted, there is typically some dysregulation or some issue of glucose within the body. The next major function is that of excretion. So metabolically active cells produce waste products, and those catabolic waste products can be excreted by the kidneys into the urine. Also, various bioactive substances, pharmaceuticals, drugs, can also be excreted by the kidneys. And then finally, the kidneys serve as an endocrine source. So calcitriol, which is the activated form of vitamin D, can actually be produced by cells in the proximal convoluted tubules adjacent to the cortex of the kidneys. Calcitriol is an important part of calcium homeostasis. It serves as a means by which your gut tube can absorb calcium. So calcitriol thus helps to increase concentrations of blood calcium. Also within your kidneys, specifically peritubular cells, we have the production of EPO, or erythropoietin, which is the way in which we can exacerbate the new production of red blood cells, or erythrocytes. And then finally, the kidneys produce renin. Renin is a hormone that's an important part of the early stages of something known as the RAA pathway. The RAA pathway is a series of events in which your body responds to a decrease in blood volume. So you could have low blood pressure, you could be hemorrhaging, for whatever reason. If blood pressure is very low, juxtaglomerular cells can secrete renin. And what happens is renin catalyzes a reaction. It helps to convert angiotensinogen, which is produced by the liver, into angiotensin 1. Angiotensin 1 is then converted by an enzyme called ACE. That's short for angiotensin converting enzyme, which is produced by the lungs, into angiotensin 2. Angiotensin 2 in its own right is a very potent vasoconstrictor. And so with vasoconstriction comes an opposition to that low blood pressure, which is to increase blood pressure. And that's part of the solution. But angiotensin 2 then also is going to work within the adrenal cortex to secrete a substance called aldosterone. And aldosterone is a way that encourages cells in the distal convoluted tubule to move sodium from the filtrate back into the blood. And we know that water follows the sodium, and that helps to, with the reabsorption of water, increase blood pressure as well. So this is a very long pathway. I don't expect you to know every single detail of it, but know that this RAA pathway starts with the secretion of renin in the kidneys. So let us assess our knowledge, and that is, which structure conducts urine from the kidneys to the urinary bladder? Is it the nephron? Nope, that's the functional unit of the kidney, of which there are millions in a kidney. Is it the urethra? Nope, that is the tube that voids the urinary bladder to the external world. Is it the ureter? Yes, that is the correct answer. Thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to talking to you in the next video.